This is the new Honda Civic. It's got a 1.5 turbocharged engine, 182 horsepower, a huge boot, and it seems to be one of the most expensive compact cars out there.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Okay, there is the more expensive Giulietta, which I'm not even taking into account, because it's old, and Alfisti will tell me it's a premium brand. Similarly, DS4 is not in the game, and it's a crossover anyway. Otherwise, as far as I can tell, the Civic, standard or not, seems to be the most expensive car in its segment. Or is it?
This car in prestige trim costs almost €33,000 with CVT. Yuck. But it's got absolutely everything Honda has to offer. If you take a Skoda Octavia style and tick the options to match Civic's kit, it turns out the Civic is not quite so expensive after all. But this is not the only reason why I think Honda, despite having a smaller boot, is still better than Skoda.
Why am I even comparing the Civic to Octavia? With a 478-liter boot, the Civic is still a 100 liters behind the Skoda, but also 100 liters better than the Golf and 80 liters better than Peugeot 308.
An interesting touch, the boot cover rolls out sideways and you can mount it on either side.
The boot has a double floor, under which there is a decent size hole where the spare may be in some markets. I don't know if this was planned, but I can keep the floor folded in the middle and use it as a cargo arrangement system. There is also one shopping bag hook and a 12-volt socket. Because the boot is quite deep, it's best to fold the backrests from the passenger compartment, fold them, and there is a bump of sorts, because the floor cascades down towards the end of the car. Who designed it and who approved it is beyond me.
More observant among you probably already noticed the magic seats are gone. Magic seats, those of you who don't know, were this kind of a system where you could fold the rear bench up, kind of like a cinema chair, and you would have a lot of space here to carry larger items. Honda claims clients didn't use it as much as everyone thought they would, so they decided to move the petrol tank from under the front seats to under the back seats.
In the back, it's quite dark and dreary, but almost comfortable. Side seats are heated, there are bottle holders in the doors and cup holders in the armrest, which, by the way, is too low, so you end up leaning towards the middle. And there are no USB ports or 12-volt sockets. In the front, however, charging and connectivity options are plentiful, even though you'll have to look hard for ports. First of all, Honda offers wireless charging, so there's a convenient place to stow your phone, and behind it are USB, HDMI, and a 12-volt socket, from which you can lead cables to your phone through these rather clever grooves. Good idea.
And there's another USB port down here between the seats under the sliding cup holders. Because the cup holders slide, you can stick something bigger here, like a big bottle of water or a thermos. There are also small bottle holders in the door bins, and the glove box is quite big.
After the spaceship 8th generation Civic, the new instrument cluster is not as groundbreaking, but still modern and legible. I wouldn't mind a bit more information in one place instead of having to scroll through the menus, but that's not a big deal. Infotainment screen finally doesn't look like a last-minute afterthought, but functionality is hardly class-leading. And AC knobs are placed right where the radio volume and tuning controls should be. That's annoying.
I remember Hondas from 20 years ago which had interiors like no competitor. Today, Kia makes as good or better interior. And you know what they say about competition and standing in one place. And now for the elephant in the room, which is the engine. It's still called VTEC, but this time it's a turbo. There are two turbo engines to choose from. One is a 1-liter 3-cylinder 129 horsepower, and the one we have here, that's a 4-cylinder 1.5 182 horsepower.
Comparing Honda Civic to the competition, I took into account displacement ranging from 1.2 to 1.6 liters. Some brands simply have nothing with comparable performance, so for Civic money you can consider a much faster and more powerful Kia Ceed GT or a Renault Megane GT. More comparable are a 1.5-liter Golf or even a 1.2-liter Peugeot 308, which offer performance not far off from the 182 horsepower Civic. Speed demon this car ain't, and if you go for the 1-liter engine, you can expect Auris-like snail performance.
With a 0 to 100 km per hour time of 8.5 seconds, the Civic looks fast, but is not really fast. If you want fast, you have to wait for the new Civic Type R.
But let's not complain, because the new Civic now has independent rear suspension, the chassis is more rigid and steering is even more precise. Even if you won't surprise anyone from the lights, on a twisty road the Civic is simply the best. I like how Focus handles, but I would rather take the long way home in a Civic.
If it were up to me, I would never choose a Civic, or any Honda for that matter, with an automatic gearbox. Honda manual shifters are very precise, they've got short throw, it's a real joy to drive. This one here is an automatic, or rather a CVT, which, as I said on many occasions, it's the work of the devil. However, this CVT actually is pretty good at pretending it's an automatic. So I'm going about 70-80 kilometers per hour, I put my foot down, and the revs increase along with the speed, and there is something like an upshift. So, oh, it can go fast and it can pretend to upshift and downshift. There are even paddles to play with. So now it pretends it's in fourth, now it pretends it's in third. I can also put it in sports mode. It's a good CVT, this one. As far as the stiffness goes, now the chassis is stiffer, the suspension is stiffer, and because of the stiffness, on a bumpy road you feel every bump. The sound insulation is average at best, so in everyday situations on a motorway this car would not be as comfortable as, let's say, a Volkswagen Golf. God, this thing corners like it's on rails. Gives me a lot of confidence even today when it's raining. Yeah, I know you see cutaways, sunny cutaways, but yeah, the weather changed.
And the rear visibility is nothing to write home about, never mind the spoiler in the middle, but you can park a bus in the C-pillar blind spot. Perhaps this is why the Civic beeps at me every chance it gets instead of flashing a light first. Some of the beepers can be turned off, but only until you restart the car. I like having adaptive cruise control and lane keeping assist though.
Honda promises 6.1 liters per 100 kilometers in combined cycle, averaging around 8, and with a 46-liter tank. If you're driving mainly around the city, be ready to refuel around every 400 kilometers.
And the looks. I like the car from some angles, but as a whole, I'm not convinced. The 2017 Honda Civic prices start at €20,000 for a 1-liter S-trim model. This 1.5 Prestige model costs around 31.5 grand. Add €1,200 for CVT. Difference between a top trim 1-liter and top trim 1.5-liter is around €2,500.
10th generation Honda Civic has modest performance and controversial looks, but it is spacious and great to drive. Definitely worth considering in a world full of Focuses, Octavias and Aurises.
And how do you like the new Civic? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe, rate, share, and watch more of my compact car reviews. If you like what I do, please support me on Patreon or PayPal, and of course join me for a new episode every Friday. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.